The following story contains performances from Madame Raven and Mercury the Scribe. They're two of the most talented narrators there are, and I'm lucky to have them in my life. I'm lucky to know them. Enjoy the story. An Instagrammer shared her Rules of the Road story with me. It still haunts me. Written by C.B. Jones. The following is a transcript from a short radio program that has been picked up by various listeners across the continental United States. Many have been perplexed by its sudden appearance and how it seems to preempt whatever song or radio program they are listening to at the time. It has even been known to appear on streaming programs such as podcasts or Spotify. After experiencing the broadcast myself, I began to seek out and record the experiences of individuals who had heard the radio program. Many have had unique experiences, hearing different scripts on the program and having drastically different consequences. Sasha contacted me via email, and we later had a meeting on Skype. She was a young woman in her early 20s and had heard the broadcast while road tripping in California with her friend Greta. In her email, she was assured and driven. It was important for her to share her story, she said. But as I got her on the screen, as she sat at a desk in a pleasant home office with stark white walls and plenty of natural sunlight, she was tentative and shy at first. She read from a stack of papers in a shaky voice. However, the longer she spoke, the more her voice shed the insecurity, and a sly, confident young woman emerged. This is her story.
They say that behind every great man is a great woman. What they don't tell you is behind that great woman is me, taking a picture of that great woman's behind, making sure that it's framed perfectly in the shots, as she stands before some grand vista or gorgeous natural landscapes. I'm there to capture the natural beauty of both the scenery and her ass, a perfect upside-down heart that's squeezed into whatever activewear she's promoting at the time, her thick blonde mane of hair cascading down her back like the many waterfalls she posed in front of. Greta was an Instagrammer, an influencer, and I was the one standing behind her, responsible for much of her success, as her photographer and caption writer and social media manager. For several years I considered her my best friend. Before I go further, I'd like to preface all of this by saying that my relationship with Greta has always been kind of complicated. And by complicated, I mean borderline exploitative. I believe that in any relationship there are givers and there are takers. Greta was not a giver. This was not to say that she was some awful soul-sucking bitch. In fact, I did have genuine warm feelings towards her, and still do to this day. In any abusive relationship, there's that sort of love there, something that draws us to the person initially. That's what keeps us coming back. The idea that maybe they will change back into the person we revered in the beginning. We met back east in college, in a class we were both taking. She approached me with regards to an essay that she needed help with, and a friendship blossomed from there. She was charismatic and full of crackling energy that I was instantly drawn to, and I was flattered that she took an interest in me. Sure, it seems like it was a relationship that started solely on her needing something, my assistance with her various writing assignments, but she offered much in return and genuinely liked me. What did she offer in return? Adventure and excitement. She talked me into using marijuana for the first time, late nights out in the city with crazy experiences, concerts and Broadway shows, meeting all sorts of new people. My first shot of absinthe and the travel. Oh, the travel. I wouldn't have seen many parts of the world if it wasn't for her. She came from a rich family, and I was on a scholarship and had work-study to get by. I simply couldn't afford the lavish trips and restaurants that she took me to. It was always hard to simply turn her down when she invited me out to eat or to a concert or show, and I would have to politely decline without giving the real reason. But she saw through that. "Whatever, dude, I'm buying," she would say, and off we would go. The response was the same when she came with the bright idea that we should fly to Paris on summer break.
Do you know how much homework you've helped me with this semester? It's the least I can do. I don't want to go alone. You're my PIC. I'll get your airfare. You just get the meals and maybe buy some wine over there.
And so we went. It was here that she developed her passion for her Instagram page. Even more so than your average college girl. She already had a sizable following of over 3,000 followers. And I took cute pictures of her all over the city and came up with clever captions. By the time we returned to the States, she had doubled the followers and was discussing it constantly.
You know, we may be onto something here. There's like these people that do this full time, just fly around and travel and get sponsors and shit. They pay for everything. How cool is that?
The rest of the summer was filled with adventure and shenanigans. Me, the ever tag-along, taking photos of her and validating her every move. Long weekends at the Hamptons, cocktails at the Roof Bar in New York City, fashion gals, and a hike in the Adirondacks, so she wouldn't appear too metropolitan.
It was here that Sasha paused her story and stared off into space, reflecting, perhaps? How was this story going to end? What broadcast did Buck Hensley present to them? What rule was obeyed or ignored? Sasha?
"Oh, sorry,"
she continued.
"I couldn't keep up with her financially, but she paid for lots of amenities. Meals, hotels, transportation. Don't worry about it," she would say. "You're like my publicist. We're growing followers all the time. I really think this will work. We need to get bigger. You consider yourself the manager. It's our brand. I'm just the face of it." Despite whatever support I received, it still would clean me out. Pride kept me from outright begging every time, and I lived constantly on the verge of overdraft from my checking account. I didn't want to miss out on all the fun and excitement, though. She had me addicted. But I often wished she would take it easy and we could just relax and do more low-key activities. Activities that I would suggest and that she would shoot down. She didn't have a boyfriend and never strived for anything long-term. "I don't need no man," she would say. "They only keep me from reaching my full potential. Once I reach that, I'll reconsider." This is not to say that she didn't enjoy a male attention. She very much did. And she was prone to random hookups and casual flings. I didn't like these types of relationships, and the particular kind of sleazy douchebag guys that flocked to her at the different bars we would frequent. I did have genuine warm feelings towards her, and still do to this day. I was often left to fend for myself with the friends, and most of the time I was able to fight them off. But alcohol and exhaustion and boredom led to too many mornings where I would awaken in a strange location and a depressing subway ride home. Hating myself and the night I could barely remember. It was times like these that I felt like Greta was dragging me down. Ultimately, I knew I was an adult and made my own decisions. But I wish she did a better job of looking out for me sometimes. I was losing myself in her, remaking myself into a person I wasn't, and I couldn't get off the carousel that was continuing to spin faster and faster and out of control. She broke 100K followers by the fall semester and had gained several sponsors, getting her first checks and free products. I got the hand-me-down products, the items she didn't want, and she gave me a cut of the profits for taking the pictures and writing the captions. I never knew exactly how much she got paid and if I was getting a fair share. I didn't think about getting a lawyer or drawing up a contract. It was just a casual affair, and I was frankly happy at that point to be getting any money. Greta continued to gain followers. The growth seemingly exponential, and we got busier and busier. My grades began to slip that semester, and I think Greta's did as well. She dropped classes and wasn't even carrying a full course load. Whenever I expressed reservations about the workload and falling behind in classes, she would come with the convenient, exciting news that we'd received another payment and cut me a check. This was usually enough to appease me. By the time that summer rolled around and I had graduated, Greta had reached 750,000 followers, and I was tired. So tired. I felt like a shell of myself and desperately in need of a break. I'd gotten a coveted internship at a magazine for the summer, and I was thankful for the opportunity not to live in Greta's shadow, taking her pictures and bolstering her fame. She was not too pleased with my decision, and it led to a dramatic and emotional confrontation at my apartment after my graduation.
I can't believe you're going to be gone all summer, leaving me high and dry right when we're about to break 1 million.
She said as she sipped her wine. Greta, I said in pleading tones, this internship really means a lot to me. This is big time. It can really open a lot of doors.
Fine,
she said as she procured a joint that we proceeded to smoke. We zoned out to the TV, and soon I noticed that the bottle of wine was empty, and I could hear her banging around in the kitchen. She returned to the couch with a glass of bourbon.
You know what? Fuck your magazine and your internship. How much are they paying you anyways?
It's not about the money.
Well, what is it about? You getting tired of me? That's how it always ends.
I could see tears at the corners of her eyes. Greta.
I thought you were different.
Her voice began to break.
No, it's fine. I just thought we were in this together. I totally understand.
I'm just so tired of the fast-paced life. I can't keep up with you anymore.
But this is gonna be totally different. It's more travel, more road trips, cross-country. It would be like the one last trip before we have to enter the world of adulthood. It will be totally epic and totally laid back at the same time. More outdoorsy.
I didn't say anything.
I can pay you. How much are you supposed to make over there? I'll pay all your room and board, plus a weekly rate.
She sounded frantic, spouting stuff off, anything to get me to change my mind. Before I knew it, the glass of liquor was empty. Her words were slurring.
My dad has some connections with the New Yorker. He could land you an editing job. I swear. Do this for me. We're so close. I need you. You're like my sister.
I could only wince and shake my head. The words were caught in my throat, and I didn't know what to say.
Fine,
she cried and stormed off back into the kitchen, and I heard glass breaking as soon as she emerged, standing at the threshold of the kitchen, a stream of blood running down her forearm and onto the floor.
I'm so sorry,
she said, and sobbed over and over again as I held a dish rag over the wound to stop the bleeding, and held her as she cried into my shoulder. I ended up withdrawing from my internship and going on the road trip. The self-inflicted scar on her forearm, we ended up taking an artsy black and white photo of it and making an Instagram post about how we had struggles and the importance of self-care and taking care of your mental health. It got 500K likes.
At this point, Sasha stopped again and didn't speak for a while. I was beginning to wonder if she had somehow mistakenly contacted me. Her story, while riveting in a millennial sort of way, didn't seem to have anything to do with Buck Hensley. Sasha, did you have an experience with the broadcast on your road trip? She looked up at me confused. Buck Hensley and the rules of the road? I asked.
Oh, right. Yes, we heard it in California. We had just left Joshua Tree and had taken a plethora of photos. I was sunburnt and tired and cranky, and the sun was coming down. I'd come up with a caption for a photo of Greta hanging off one of the trees, something like, "If you're cool enough, he'll let you hang on his branches and call him Josh." Not my best work, but it was something. Greta looked stunning as usual, and she rode in the passenger seat, posting the pic and hashtags and fended off haters and tended to the horny boys in the comments of the post. She was laughing and talking to herself while she worked her phone, when all of a sudden she looked at me and said in a serious tone,
Sasha, a publisher has found my Instagram feed and wants a book deal. It's one of the big ones. They want photos and stories of my adventures on the road.
"That's great. I can help with the writing. I've done all the captions. I mean, I can help you portray your vision, our vision."
Yeah, that's the thing. They have a team they would like to use. Ghostwriter and publicist and editor and everything. I've been in contact with all of them.
Oh, a sledgehammer had hit me in the gut, and I drove in silence. I fought back tears. An hour passed and I didn't say a word. I was so goddamn angry. And it took all I had not to explode on her. I was done. Next chance I got, I was out of there. She had her publishing team. She didn't need me. I'd given her everything and then some. I turned on the radio, some top 40s BS. I wasn't really even listening. Rage coursed through me. She could sense I was upset and knew well enough not to talk. I turned up the volume of the radio, and the drum beats of the music began to sound like a heartbeat that sounded like it was throbbing right in my ears and then in my throat. Then there was sudden silence, and then a voice started talking. This is what it said.
Good evening, folks. Buck Hensley here with yet another episode of The Rules of the Road. Hope y'all doing just dandy out there tonight on that highway known as life, on that planet known as Earth. Why do they call it Earth anyways? Who named it? Is that what's on the birth certificate out there after it shot out of a supernova's hoo-ha? If you ask me, Earth's parents dropped it on its head a few times. That's why she's so weird and wonky and cruel. Speaking of names, what's in a name? Besides letters, that is. I don't rightly know, but I do know that names are important. Since the dawn of written and oral history, folks have had names. Even the elder gods that have existed long before us had names. You just can't pronounce them. By golly, names are important. Well, my name is Bud Henson. So that brings up tonight's rule of the road. It has to do with names. Your names in particular. If at any point in your journey you stop at a gift stop or truck stop and they have them souvenir keychains with your name on it, you must purchase the one with your name on it. I'm partial to the ones with the state license plates on them myself. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Buckley. My parents were a bunch of chuckleheads, and they named me Stephanie with a fun in the middle. Stephanie. And that's anything but funny to me. Or you're thinking they named me Chris with 2 Z's and 2 T's, and they screw it up at Starbucks all the time. There ain't no way in hell they're gonna have my correct name at no gift shop. And to that I say, fair enough, but look closer. You might be surprised at what you find. So what happens if you ignore this rule? Well, it seems like a simple thing at first. How often do you really think about your own name? How important is it to you? I bet you overlook it, take it for granted. What if you lost it? If you ignore this rule, you might come to find what it's like to lose your very own name. Do so at your own peril. Well, that's all I got for tonight. Thoughts and prayers to whomever may be listening up there, that you arrive at your destination safely. But remember, these prayers are just a courtesy. It's already written, and they already know. We are doomed to stay on the same predetermined path until the end. No choice, no say in the matter. Stay alert, stay lively, stay lonely. I'm Buck Hornswallow, and these are the rules of the road.
At the time, I was too mad to think much of the broadcast. It may have lightened my mood a little bit, and Greta gave a few nervous laughs. I drove on and pulled off at a hotel near Bakersfield and got a room for the night. The next day, I'd begun to speak a little more to Greta, the bare minimum. In my mind, I was planning to get to Sacramento and fly back home and try to pick up the pieces. I hadn't revealed this information to her yet. We were low on gas and had stopped at a large truck stop. It was like a miniature grocery store in there. Rows and rows of snacks, and souvenir t-shirts, and trucker equipment, and books on CD and DVDs and sunglasses.
Hey, look.
Greta called over to me. She was standing at one of those little spinning display racks. It was full of souvenir keychains with names on them, little Route 66 themed ones. Oh yeah, like that weird radio show we heard, I said.
Think they'll have our names on them? Not the most common. If they do, we better get them, just in case.
It would suck to lose your name after all the fame you've got.
Wow, they've got 'em.
She held up 2 keychains, Greta and Sasha. Nice. I'm going to get some water and I'll buy these, I said. My treat.
Sasha paused and shuffled the papers. That strange look on her face again. Was she about to reveal what I suspected?
She went back to the car, and at the checkout I paid for 1 bottled water and 1 keychain with my name on it. The other one I left behind.
Sasha looked down at her stack of papers for a long time, most likely processing the weight of what she had done back in Bakersfield. She had had no way of knowing that the rules were real and that they could be deadly. What had been the consequence? Death? Was there a gravestone out there over Greta's body? No name etched into the granite? She shuffled her papers and squinted at the words, and then began again, her voice now monotone.
It was subtle at first, occurring over weeks and the rest of the summer. First, I'd have to repeat myself a lot of times to get her attention, like she wasn't hearing her name. She would get confused, look on her face, and kind of snap back into it, and laugh and say something about a brain fart or being hungover. Then she would freeze up when she was trying to sign credit card receipts, staring blankly for an awkward amount of time. I'd have to sign for her, We couldn't rely on her to make any reservations. She would never know what name to put it under. This would come and go as strange random events. Sometimes it was like nothing had ever happened, and she would seem completely normal, her old self. She could remember her name and who she was, and all of our prior adventures. Other times she put on a good front and was able to deceive just how confused she really was. It was only in talking to her that she would say something outrageous about her past, that she was a supermodel from Australia, or that her name was Ashley, and you would realize she was in one of her states. Meeting new people was a problem. She could only smile awkwardly during the introduction, and I would have to say her name for her. She talked much less when she was like this, only smiled and nodded. You could ask her a question directly and she would answer, but not in a way that made sense. She seemed lost in her own apartment, frequently opening the wrong drawers and cabinets and asking me where the bathroom was. She started to let go of her hygiene. Her hair looked matted and greasy, and I would notice her wearing the same clothes for days at a time. Dishes piled up in her sink, dirty clothes all over her house. She'd gotten lost several times, and I received calls from strangers in a bar to pick her up. One time her parents had to pick her up from an emergency room. The police had found her in an alley behind a Dunkin' Donuts, lost and confused, clothing and hair disheveled. She had been missing for almost 24 hours. They got her an ID bracelet with contact information, but we all kept a closer eye on her. It was hard to go out in public because she could appear very normal, and we'd never know when she'd suddenly turn and might wander off. Her parents took her to a neurologist and she underwent a battery of tests. All of the tests were normal and they couldn't find anything conclusive. Maybe it was psychological, they suggested. I offered to take care of her and let her stay with me during the day. Had I done this to her? Was the broadcast warning real? At the time, I thought it was just a goof. If I'd known this was going to happen, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have wished this on anyone. Either way, I felt responsible, and watching her during the day was the least I could do. It worked out pretty well. I could still go out at night, and during the day, I was working on my book deal stuff.
Book deal? Had Sasha taken over the book deal after Greta's mind started to go?
I've noticed other weird things lately. Sometimes I find myself calling her the wrong name, just a few letters off or something similar. She doesn't notice, of course. She doesn't even respond if I call her the right name. I've noticed her parents doing it too. They call her Natasha or Sharon or Shannon or Shelley. The thing is, they don't notice it. It's really weird.
What? Didn't she mean names similar to Greta? Sasha spaced out again. She didn't talk for a long time. Sasha, I asked. She didn't respond. Are you okay? You couldn't have known the rules were real. I know you feel awfully guilty. She looked at me through the screen, and then to the right and to the left, picked up the paper she was reading from, and that's when I noticed it. A medical ID bracelet. I heard a voice shouting from the other room. It grew louder. Sasha turned towards the door. The voice. The door burst open, and in burst a radiant, glamorous blonde.
There you are,
she said.
What are you doing up here?
I'm just...
She trailed off and gestured towards the computer screen.
Oh, who have you called up? Is this that journalist guy you were talking about? Hope you didn't tell him anything too bad about me.
The blonde said with a wink at the camera. She looked at me and spoke.
The psychiatrist recommended her keeping a journal. Write things down when she remembered. He thinks it might help some. I guess she contacted you when she was lucid?
Yes, you must be Greta.
Sure am.
Can you tell me what's going on? Greta sat down at the desk and patted Sasha on the back.
She's been stable for a while. Has some really good days.
She turned to Sasha and said in a babyish voice,
We have to get you to your parents soon. Mommy has a big date tonight.
She turned to look at me.
I've got a book release party this evening and lots of getting ready to do.
But I thought that... I started. Greta looked down at the stack of papers.
What are these doing here?
She asked.
Have you been getting into my stuff again? You got part of yours mixed up with mine, you big goof.
Sasha looked down like a scolded child.
I'm going to release a memoir about taking care of a friend with a mentally debilitating disease. It's going to be my sophomore publication. These are some notes for the ghostwriter. Well, it was nice to meet you. Say bye, Natasha.
Sasha looked at me with a flat expression, as everything I had just learned was turned upside down. As Greta reached to turn off the computer and hang up the call, I could see in her hand she held her keys. From the keys hung a little Route 66 souvenir keychain with a name etched on it. Greta. Well, that was a lovely story, wasn't it? If you're jonesing for more, consider joining the subreddit Jonesing for Fear to stay up to date on rules of the road.